Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Special Committee of the Whole meeting regarding the Regional Growth Framework for the Sunshine Coast Regional District at June 1st, 2023 at this time, 1:30 p.m. And I first want to acknowledge that the Sunshine Coast Regional District is within the territories of the Shishel and the Squamish Nations. We need to adopt the agenda first, and I'll just announce the adjustment that we do need to go in camera right off the bat at the request of some directors to speak further about this item under 91K of the Community Charter, which is negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages, and that in the view of council, it says, sorry for the wording of the Community Charter, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the local government. I'm going to switch in there for municipality if they were held in public. Director Inkster.
So you'd like us to go into the meeting so that we can go in camera?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we need to adopt the agenda first,
Okay.
And I'm just announcing that right off the bat that we need to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Moved by Director Inkster, seconded by Director Gabius to adopt the agenda with that in camera at the start. All those in favor? The motion carries. Now we need to move to go into in camera under the section I read. I see Director Toth, Director Inkster seconding that. All those in favor? Okay, we are moving to in camera. Is there do we need a little pause here? thank you for waiting, if anybody has been out there. We're back in public. Just needed to have a discussion on how to proceed here, and we're ready to do so. So we are looking at the Sunshine Coast Regional District Regional Growth Framework Baseline Research Reports, which are item 2, Annex A of our agenda, pages 2 to 117. And I'll look to our staff table to briefly introduce this.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the committee for attending a special meeting due to the cancellation of the normal committee of the whole schedule last week, and the timeliness fit with the launch of the OCP renewal work, and also the importance of the topic. As context, I also wanted to say, before introducing this, that staff have heard since publication that there are needs or opportunities to build on, refine, or correct information in the consultants' reports, which I'll come back to in a moment. So why is this on today's agenda? Following board direction, an intergovernmental team led by senior planner Yuli Sao undertook a research project related to regional growth with Modus as the lead consultant. Modus provided an overview presentation to Sunshine Coast elected officials on May 18th. At this time, staff are seeking governance-level direction on how to proceed with the use of these reports. A set of questions and recommendations is included in staff's report on page 4, and staff would note these are not the only options. And so, touching back on, for example, in terms of building on, refining, or correcting information in the consultants' reports, these could be addressed with, for example, a supplemental document that addresses these. And staff are prepared to action the board's direction on this matter and are pleased to answer any questions related to the options presented or on alternatives that the committee may propose. Thank you.
Thank you, GM Hall. I'll look to directors for questions. I'm sure there will be some. Director Bax.
Yeah, I'd just like to know, we're not obliged to follow all the recommendations of this report, are we?
No, we are not.
Okay, thank you.
And that's why, I think that's largely why the recommendations from staff are to refer the report to really other processes and bodies to consider in our work as we go ahead. Like, for example, I mean, we are, at the Town of Gibsons, we are planning to update our strategic plan, or our official community plan. One of the recommendations here is that this be forwarded to other local governments who are considering this kind of thing, and that's completely reasonable. We can have a look at these recommendations, and maybe some of them will jibe with us, and maybe some won't, and that'll be up to those future processes. And same goes for processes here at the regional district. Director Stamford.
Looking at the recommendations on page 4, reading through this document, there was a significant piece missing in that the reference to islands and the Islands Trust was not clarified. The islands are not subject to a regional growth strategy, the way the regional district is. And I think that needs to be clarified in specifically Area B and Area F. So I would recommend specifically that one of the referral organizations for this would be Islands Trust, Gambia Local Trust Area Committee, so that they can provide the appropriate reference to how the islands fit within a regional growth strategy or not. I'd just like to comment, on the other hand, that there are some opportunities, especially in service suggestions within this document, that are useful and are appropriate for the trust to be, or the islands and the Islands Trust to be part of, such as referencing fire, road conditions, reports, those kinds of things. But that overall growth strategy, some kind of mention of how the Islands Trust fits into a regional growth strategy or not within a regional district is important.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Thank you. I kind of struggled with the MODIS recommendations because some of them fall within the jurisdiction of the regional district, some fall within jurisdiction of municipalities, some are provincial, some are federal. Some are wishful thinking in some ways. Like they're all things that we would love to do, but it's not clear to me how we would do that. And a worthy one is that collaboration between electoral areas and incorporated municipalities on issues that cross boundaries, which is great, and we need to do that. But then there's other things about, say, watersheds that are almost entirely outside of the jurisdiction of local governments. So it's hard for me to get my head around these recommendations and what they would guide, like where are we going? How could we do any of this? We can create a plan, but how do we make it an actionable plan at the end of the day?
Thank you, Director McMahon. Any more discussion on this? I'll take the opportunity then at this point to just point out that there are, from the town of Gibson's perspective, there are some inaccuracies in this report, and they are they are details of the report. They're important details, like our water system and our sewage treatment system, and that were included in the engineering report here, as well as in other places. But we do. I think it's important to recognize too that this is a big picture document. It's not those inaccuracies don't necessarily reflect the recommendations at the end of the report, which is what we need to be considering right now. And I do need to just point that out on the public record because I am concerned about some members of the public being misled by those details. And go to the town of Gibson's if you want accurate information on the town of Gibson's water and sewage system. So I'll just recommend that. Director Gabius.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I guess maybe this is a time where I could put out some names of organizations that I would like some feedback from. I would like to hear from Resource Center, especially the seniors planning table, since we have an aging population. So I would like to know what they think of this. And also, there's no reference to agriculture or food security in this document. So I would like to have some feedback from perhaps community services and or Farmers Institute. So if this document could be forwarded to them, I would really appreciate that.
Farmers Institute. Director Bax, presuming, yeah, Director McMahon, your hand's up from previous, right? Or is it still up? Okay. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, Director Bax has spoken already too, so you can go ahead.
So if we are referring all of this to our APCs, I think it would be helpful to give them a little more specific direction because there's a lot of reading in here. And if we're primarily interested in their feedback on the 11 key recommendations that start on page 104, I think that would be a good focus for discussion. And then the rest of it could be more like background supporting material, but that's kind of where I would like to get the community feedback.
Good point. So when something like this would go out to referral, would it be under an email or a letter from staff or from the board, and can these kinds of concerns being brought up by the board be reflected in that?
Thank you for the question. Typically, referrals are conducted through a letter, typically referencing the board's decision on the matter or request or direction to refer. And certainly, there's room to add some specificity or color to the ask that's included with the referral. Sometimes that is reflected in the board's directive. Sometimes it's through conversation at the boardroom table. Thank you.
The Director Bax next, and then Director Inkster.
Yeah, on recommendation number 2, to refer this document to a growing list of agencies, I'd like to add the BC Ferries Corporation. I think they should know that we are an entity that is interested in growth, and that we would like them to get on board with that. On board.
Director Inkster.
Yeah, just a process question to you, Chair. There's a number of suggestions that have been made as how do we proceed with this document, including how we address our APCs in the case of the non-municipal groups. I guess in our case, it's also to our APC with the District of Sechelt. Are they suggestions then going to staff and they incorporate that into the final decision, or should we be making motions in order to change where the document goes, as well as what page for the APCs to recommend start on? Are they motions or are they just suggestions? And if in fact we need to make sure it's done, should we not make motions, i.e. Director McMahon making a motion to suggest that her APC in particular start at a particular page, going forward, making motions from other directors to have particular groups within their community receive the document?
Yes, it could get complicated. So, you know, as a GM just mentioned, sometimes direction and suggestions in the cover letter could be from board motion. Sometimes they could be conversations. So we're already having a conversation here. I've been taking notes on some of the agencies that directors have brought up here, if we do need a motion on those. I think we probably should, but I'll look to staff again to just kind of figure out the line of where, what conversation, how much are you taking forward from conversation so far, and how much do we need to actually specify by motion?
Thank you for the question, Chair. From staff's point of view, we would add to the wording of the recommendation that's on page 2 of the agenda, point number 2, to incorporate the wording from page 4 as presented or as amended. And I hear our recording secretary adding the names of prospective referral agencies as the committee is discussing them. And so if the perhaps it would be helpful if the committee likes to have that read back with a list and have it confirmed before it is formally turned into a motion for voting. Thank you.
Sounds good. Director Bax?
I had a separate question pertaining to the report's recommendation, or the report of potential for growth, and a map on page 102. I was told by one of the other directors, I'm sorry I forgot which one, that when this report was presented, at some point there was an actual physical large paper map of this, and if it does in fact exist, the opportunities for growth map on page 102, if there's a large paper version of this map, I would personally like to have a look at it, if I may.
Yeah, this can probably be done outside of the board meeting, but we could ask, does this mythical map exist first?
The map is a digital map. There are higher resolution. If resolution is part of the issue, that can be addressed. The production of physical maps is something that we can also have undertaken by our GIS team. Thanks.
So I received erroneous information, and there is no physical map existing at the moment, is that right?
Yeah, it's digital map. But you can inquire about seeing that or having it. I mean, if it's, is this something that would be helpful for all directors to have this actually printed off as I don't think we need copies for each person, but maybe.
I just wanted to
Director
chime
Toth.
in, Chair, that on that map that is presented in the report on page 102, you can zoom right into the street level on it. So it is high enough resolution to zoom right in on. And there are ways, to print just single zoomed in sections of the map. But just to save paper for the organization, thanks.
Okay, let's get back to the recommendations. Here we have recommendations on page 2. And that second recommendation directly refers to a set of recommendations on page 4. They don't necessarily conflict with each other, I don't think. I think it's kind of a set that we could put forward together if everybody's agreeable to that, or if someone's at least agreeable to putting forward that motion with the, and if you generally want to say with the added groups that have been mentioned today at the meeting, I think that'll work, and then we can read off what those groups are before we actually vote. Make sure it's a full list. That's the way I will suggest going forward. And I'll just leave it there. Yeah, or if somebody disagrees with that, then I see Director Lee.
Well, I like all 7 recommendations, and they seem to fulfill what we've talked about. And so I would make a motion that we accept those recommendations on page 4.
Yeah, with the groups, yeah, I did say that was understood, I think, yeah. Yeah, there might be a awkward one in there, I don't know where it came from, but.
So if I second it, is it going forward as phase 1? Is that the
I'm just going
title?
to suggest here too, sorry, Director Inkster,
Yeah.
that because just for some consistency with groups that are partners with the SCRD and within the SCD as APCs, can we limit it at that in section 1? Local governments, First Nations, and advisory planning commissions, and then the other groups. And if there's another group that needs to be added to, it can at this table, but we shouldn't be listing one specific one here. That's a community group. Maybe someone else will want to. So, is that understood? No, it's not. Okay, there's one group here that's the Roberts Creek OCPC that is a community group, that isn't a local government, it isn't an APC, and I think it should be up to the board to suggest that maybe should be added rather than be in the baseline recommendation. I want to leave that to the board to suggest. So, does anyone have any objection to that at this point? No. No. Okay. So that would be an amendment. Yeah. For now, we're looking at this recommendation with those groups that have been suggested, community groups that have been suggested, the APCs, First Nations, and local governments, and then, of course, all the 7 recommendations here. And we will read out those groups at some point. I'll look to Director Bax right now, though.
Well, in keeping with what I think you're trying to say is that I recommend that we remove the Roberts Creek OCPC from recommendation number 1. And We did that and put them into recommendation number 2. They're a public group that, if the feedback will most likely not be coming back to the board, but it'll be coming directly back to me. And I do, they're a community group that does give me, that are very involved in my community, and I want to hear from them.
I just wanted to make sure that we make that,
Yeah.
that addition. Kind of a default, because I think it's been, yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
thank you.
So we're still crafting the original motion. I'm going to interpret it that the OCPC is in there. I wanted to confirm that because I saw some concerns about just how it wasn't aligned with the APC's First Nations. So that's Director Lee.
There is numerous community groups in each area, I think, that the directors would like to refer to it. So for the purpose of the motion, would we just say various community groups is? And
Does
the
that give staff
APC?
enough direction, though? I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity to chime in, Chair. Anticipating community interest in this topic, recommendation number 3 is sort of is related to the question of how do we reach all groups or parties that may have an interest in this. Not like we know many of them, but we may not know all of them, and we'd like to be inclusive. And so the use of the Let's Talk tool is an opportunity for broad input, and directors would be welcome to point any contacts that they have to that. Thanks.
Very good point. Director McMahon.
I was basically going in that direction as well.
Okay, let's have a list of the groups now, just so that we make sure the groups that we are going to directly refer this to are the ones that we've intended here.
Okay, I've written the Islands Trust and the Gambier Local Trust Area Committee.
Local trust area, yeah.
Okay. The Sunshine Coast Resource Center, Sunshine Coast Community Services Society, Farmers Institute, BC Ferries Corporation, and the Roberts Creek OCPC.
Okay. Do we have any amendments to add to that list or take away from that list? Director McMahon?
When we refer something to Vancouver Coastal Health, there's a lot of different departments in VCH which don't necessarily talk to each other. And I'm assuming that we would be going through the planning-related department, like that handles septic approvals or whatever, but is there another department we should flag that's more about public health concerns?
I could try to answer this and say it should be the public health officer who a few of us just met for the first time. Her name's escaping me right now, but that's certainly who. Yeah, I see nods from staff. Yeah. VCH is in here, so that's covered. Okay, are we ready to vote then on this? Looks like it. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? One opposed? Do you want that recorded? No, it doesn't matter. So the motion carries. So we've set out a direction on this. Thank you, staff, for your very thorough and thoughtful recommendations here. It made it much easier for us. Is there any more discussion here? That clarification and next steps? I think they're pretty thorough here. Director McMahon?
Yeah, where exactly? I mean, growth is huge. Is very relevant for all the reasons in the report and all the reasons that we know. But are we aiming at a regional growth strategy as mandated by the province, or are we aiming at a lesser version of that would not have necessarily all of the same requirements attached to it, or how are we trying to get to some sort of consensus on how to go forward on regional growth in as accelerated a timeline as we can manage?
That's a fantastic question, because it looks like from our recommendations so far, that's my interpretation is we're not necessarily moving ahead right away to have a official regional growth strategy, but maybe that's something that would be, the anticipation is might be discussed further at strategic planning. I'd guess that from the board level here, but I'll look to staff to answer this question too.
Thank you, Chair. I think the director's comments resonate with staff. That's in part why recommendations 5, 6, and 7 are included here, because there are next step discussions that have to, I mean, that's my impression, is there's more work to be done before a strategy at a regional level is settled on. The other, if I can mention a resource that's included on the Let's Talk page that's referenced within this report. There's a 2018 report that has a historical summary of regional growth management research and efforts on the Sunshine Coast, and provides context to the decisions that may come from the work associated with recommendations 5 through 7. Thanks.
Director Inkster.
So there's a number of referrals that obviously that are here, let's call them that. And so the information will come back to this board and or staff when to come back to this board then after it goes through staff for further discussion and forward movements and our process forward movement based on what Director McMahon had said. What next, right? When does it come back? Is there does the board ever set a deadline of when this should come back, or do we just wait then now for information to come back from all the groups involved? Is there timelines?
Will we have a deadline for the referrals? Okay. Director Lee first.
I believe it's step 7 that we just approved, which says Q3 and Q4 of 2023. They'll come back with a report. That's what I understood. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there will be deadlines set
Yeah,
for the
there is.
referrals that'll align to being able to produce a report, and yeah. Okay. Are we ready to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Toth, seconded by Director Gabius. All those in favor? The meeting's adjourned. Okay. Got a question from the gallery?
Good afternoon, Chairman Lee, Chairperson White. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, thanks. It's Connie, Coast Reporter. I realize this is committee, but I was wondering if there was any update that could be provided on the agreement negotiations between the town of Gibsons and the SCRD regarding access to town water supplies when stage 2 water restrictions are called.
No. I don't have anything from the last couple days, so yeah, since same answer as the last time I answered the question, unfortunately, so don't have anything more for you.
Thank you for the response.